everyone. Ed Bates again from Kilworth Chiropractic Clinic, and welcome to today's Daily Dose. So today, I thought I would talk about discs. No doubt all of you have heard of slip discs or disc prolapses or disc herniations. But what exactly are they, and what really goes on? And does anything actually slip out of place? Well, in a word, no. Nothing slips out of place. That is a complete misnomer. So as we've talked about before, your spines are made up of 24 blocks of bone with the discs, the spacers, or the shock absorbers in between. Now, the disc basically absorbs as a shock absorber, yes, and a spacer, but it also allows for movement. And the way the disc works is it's basically in two parts. So this is your block of bone, and this is your disc. So the disc has a ball bearing in the middle of it, a soft, squidgy ball bearing, and it's literally surrounded by these rings of ligamentous tissue from there. Now, what happens if we take that disc out and look at it from above, this is what it's going to look like. So you've got the ball bearing in the middle, and it's surrounded by these rings of ligament tissue. Now, what happens is basically as you bend and move your spine, that ball bearing shifts from side to side. But what we've got to realize is it's essential, because the disc is a living structure, it's essential that it gets oxygen and it gets nutrients. And the way it does that is by movement. But what can happen is that we do things to our spines that basically twists and turns and moves our body out of an optimal position. And that can cause our spines to either become misaligned and subluxated or cause them to stiffen up. What things? Well, falls, car crashes, slips, sporting injuries, accidents, and poor posture that we've talked about a lot. And what happens is basically if you're subjected to any form of physical stress, your spines basically stiffen up. And over time, what happens is because there's a decrease in movement, it decreases the supply of oxygen and nutrients to the disc. And over time, what happens is it actually causes little tears to appear in these basically rings of ligament. And what happens over time is basically the ball bearing starts protruding or pushing its way through those rings of cartilage. So what happens is you basically end up where the nucleus is starting to protrude outwards. So this is just as I think you can see this is just the disc from the bird's eye view. That's the nucleus in the middle, surrounded by the rings of cartilage. And basically normally when things are moving, the body is able to give proper nutrients and oxygen to those areas. But then over time, if it stiffens, the nucleus starts drying up from there. And that then leads to basically the nucleus pushing outwards. Now, what then happens is basically that then bulges or prolapse out the side, and it's like a tube of toothpaste. And what that can do is then put pressure on the nerves. And if that happens in your low back, that can cause numbness, weakness, shooting pain, or sciatic pain shooting down your leg. If it's up in the neck area, it can cause pain and tingling and numbness and shooting pain down the arm into the hand. So if this is what you're suffering from, well, what can you do? Well, first and foremost, I empathize because the pain can be absolutely excruciating. But the reality is the focus of care long-term wise must be on correcting a problem. And what is the problem? Well, the problem is because there's a lack of proper movement. So unless you correct the movement, you're never going to truly correct the source of the problem. So many people are referred for pain management, but what drug or what injection is going to truly correct that? And yes, unfortunately, in some cases, absolutely surgery may well be necessary. But what you got to realize is that surgery should be the very, very last resort. So what else should you do? Well, basically, that's why we would always recommend that everyone should get their spines checked by a chiropractor. As I said, by only restoring normal movement, get your spine back into a proper position, can that truly lead to the correction of the problem. And in fact, a recent study showed that chiropractic care was more successful over a 5-year period than surgery for disc herniations and disc prolapses. So if you want further information, don't hesitate to get in contact with us. And in the meantime, have a great day, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay happy.